The floor is the floor is yours, Abhijit.
Yes. So you guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would like to take 5 minutes just to recall like what has happened till now in this course. So this will make sure that we are on the same page, and also this will add context to what I'm going to speak now. That means today. So essentially, we saw initially that there are attacks that fool the neural networks or any model, and these are calculated attacks, and they fool the way the neural networks perform. And we also looked at what these attacks are, how the perturbations are designed. So essentially, we looked at TE methods, three attacks. One was FGSM, which was very traditional, and then we looked at Carlini-Wagner, which was a more upgraded version, because in Carlini-Wagner, we were ensuring that the perturbations, we were having a check on the perturbations, because we were solving an optimization problem where we were minimizing the perturbation, provided that we also wanted to have a adversary happening. So that were our constraint in that optimization problem. And after that, we moved to PGD attack, which was, I would say, a upgraded version of FGSM, in which we run the FGSMs for multiple iterations. And also the unique thing about the PGD attack is that we project it back. If the point goes beyond our bounds, we project that point back into on our boundary. So these were the three attacks that we discussed. And after that, since we discussed about the attacks, we were curious like how can we train these models? And we found out that the research has been done in a way that they assume that attack happens and then they try to like train the model in that setting. So this is called a adversarial training, and essentially we also saw like how that is done. So we have a min max problem. Initially, like in traditional ML, we have a minimization problem where we reduce or we minimize the expectation of the loss. We minimize the expectation over the distribution for the loss, and then we just do that. But in adversarial generalization or adversarial training, we also have a max term, and we also add some perturbation to it. So essentially what we are doing is we are adding a perturbation to the input and then maximizing the loss and then minimizing it over the whole expectation. So this is what we have done as explained by Taif in the last lecture, where we have used PGD attack for designing the defense. And what we have done there is that for this min-max problem, for each input, we were doing the PGD attack. So for each input, we were finding a point where the loss will be the maximum, and we were taking that point for adversarial training. So in a way, what we have done was we took the attack, we created the attack, and then we took that point where the loss is maximum. And there was the thing to note here is that there can be scenario where the maximum loss might not be the adversary. But essentially, that is not the objective. We were just maximizing the loss, and then we were taking the minimization for over the whole expectation. So this was what we were doing. So if you look at the chronology, we found the problem, then we found how the attacks were being done, and then we did the adversarial training. So this is what we have covered till now. And you might remember that I have discussed about this symbolic regions in the introductory sessions, like we can approximate all these points into some symbolic region and then do the processing. Now the question comes, like if I know the attack, I have done adversarial training, then what is the requirement of this verification? Like if I could train my model, if I could do adversarial training, I have a model which is adversarial robust. So what is the need of this verification or going into abstract interpretation domain? And that is what is the motivation for this lecture, and that is what we will be doing in the entire course further in future. So essentially, so this was I was talking about this in the introductory sessions. like we can approximate for all these perturbations, like for each input, I'll do perturbations. And for all set of this perturbation, I'll just replace it by an approximate symbolic region. Yeah. So why do we need this? What is the motivation for this? So that is what we are going to discuss now. And the motivation is that all this verification task is more of experimental. If you look at this, what is happening here is you do a PGD attack. You do some iterations, like maybe I'll run my PGD attack for some iterations, maybe 10 iterations or 20 iterations. So it is random. You can't guarantee the attack is going to happen. So the thing here is that in all these software testing problems, you cannot show that there are no bugs. You can only show their presence. So this is what is happening in all the attacks and defenses that we have discussed so far. We were trying to do an attack, and if that attack happens, we try to like do the adversarial training. But there are scenarios like even after like running many iterations for PGT attack, there won't be any adversary happening. So this is the thing is like we can't provide a guarantee for the attack, and we can't show that there is no attack possible for any input. So that is why we are trying to move towards abstract interpretation. And this kind of thing is not new. It has been happening from 1970s in the field of formal verification, where they for verifying the software programs or some other applications too. So this idea is not new. It dates back to 1970s or even before that. But now what people have done, or what specifically this lab has done, is to integrate this abstract interpretation for neural networks. So essentially what we are going to do, and I think Taif has discussed about this in the previous session also, is that we are going to kind of approximate our inputs for like in a region, and it can be L infinity wall or some other regions too. So if you are using a L infinity ball, then you have bounds for each of the dimension, and hence you get a box. So somehow we try to find a symbolic region, and we then try to work on this symbolic region. So, and you might now get the intuition like this is not normal. So we now need some transformers that would help us to work with these regions, because the traditional neural networks works on vectors, the vectors of the inputs. Even in CNN, you could these are just vectors. So essentially now we are moving towards like abstraction. So I think Taif has discussed this in last session, but just going to repeat it. So we make this abstraction, and how we are going to make this abstraction is that we are going to add some symbolic variables that are this E1, yeah, epsilon1, and these are like they call it as a error variables. And with help of this.
So Abhijit,
Yes.
can you tell what do you mean by x0 here, x1, x2? What are these? These are each pixel values?
Yes.
Okay.
So yes. So these are each pixel values, and you are perturbing each pixel, and you have some bounds on each pixel. So I think we'll discuss more it in future, like how are we going to do this, and there are ways how and how this symbolic region is found. So in this case, you can see it as a box, but it can be some abstract shape also. So it all depends on how are you going to work with this symbolic variables. So since and we define this symbolic abstraction of inputs as phi. And now what we are going to do is we are also defining a psi function, which is which defines the output property. That is, when I'm doing all the perturbations that can happen to an input, all the perturbation that can happen to an input, I'll pass these perturbations through the neural network. And what I want is that for each of these points in this symbolic region, I want my neural network to classify it to 8. Like in this case, if you can see, it's 8. So you need your neural network model to classify each point inside that symbolic region to classify it as 8. So this is what we want to achieve when we talk in terms of robustness. So phi is our input property and psi is our output property. And you might see here, like, why can't we work with, like, there can be question, right? Like, why can't we pick points from there and like just pass through the neural network like vectors? But you all understand, like, there can be infinite number of points inside this region, and hence we cannot work with each of the point, as it will take a lot of time. And that's why we were trying to work with the symbolic regions. And I think even it's difficult to imagine if it goes beyond 3D, and in most cases it goes beyond 3D. But then in this course, we'll be mostly looking at 2D or 3D because it helps us to visualize things. Now, I think this is a very important thing that we need to understand before going forward. That is the classification, or not classification. It's I can say it like a property that on which we define our certification methods. So the first thing is the certification method is sound. So let's first define like what is sound and what is unsound. So a reasoning method is called sound. When a program violates a property, it should state that it has violated the property. And unsound is the exact opposite, that even if the program violates a property, it may say that it has satisfied the property. And this should not exist. Ideally, what we want is that if we have some adversary happening, our certification method should be sound, and it should state that the adversary has happened. Whereas if it's unsound, then there is no point of being certified, because it will be an adversary, because you are not giving a right answer to this. So I know it's difficult to understand through this definition. So I'll try to give an example for this. So suppose I am a certification method, and the property that I have in hand to verify is that, suppose there is a new breed of fish that we got, and now I have a property to certify that whether I can eat that fish or not. So that is our property, and I am the certification method. So essentially what I will do is that I'll eat that fish, and if nothing happens to me the next day, then I would say, yes, that fish can be eaten. Or I would say, if I get some food poisoning or something like that, then I would say the fish cannot be eaten. So ideally, what do you expect from me? Like, at least I should be honest, right? If something happened to me, I should say that the fish should not be eaten. So in this way, what I would at least expect from any certification method is that it should be honest. And this is what a soundness is. So if something happens to me, I should at least state it, because if I would lie, then there is no way we can figure it out. What if I get food poisoning, but still I tell to the authorities that nothing has happened to me, which is a dangerous thing. So just let us be clear in the mind that the certification methods has to be honest, which means they should be sound. Now comes the next part, the completeness and incompleteness. So this completeness revolves around the guarantee that you can provide for what you are telling. So if I'm telling that this property holds, can I provide a guarantee for that? So let's continue that example. So now I got the fish out of water, and now I cannot eat it directly. I have to clean it and then cook it. So if you try to relate it, essentially our input is fish. We want to certify that can we eat that fish or not. And the cooking, the cleaning the fish, or marination, whatever we are doing, these are just transformations that we are doing on the input. And this is what we are going to do in this in this course also. So essentially, I have my fish and now I cook it and now I eat the fish. Suppose the next day I have food poisoning. So can I say that I cannot eat that fish or that fish is not eatable? So what do you think? Like, do you think, can I state that the fish is not eatable? According to me, I cannot guarantee that thing, because the food poisoning can also happen in the process of cooking. What if my fish was undercooked and this was the reason uh, which caused the food poisoning in me
Mm,
and not the
Very, very good, Abhijit. Very nice example. And I think this is very important for everyone to understand, what is actually the whole implication of these certification methods and what do we mean by complete. And the application is extremely relevant in safety critical domains, when you're dealing with things like aircrafts and cars and health devices, medical equipment. Anything that you deploy there has to be very well certified, because you do not know whether, let's say, if a patient was diagnosed with a disease, did he even have had a disease, or it was just because the machine was faulty. And there's a lot of work around certification that tells you, okay, it is guaranteed, and to tell you only a false a negative alarm will raise only if a patient has a problem, otherwise it will never raise. And
right.
you see, this has people have been doing this for a while for standard software systems, but not necessarily for AI based systems. And that's why the whole thing is we are talking about. Right. So good job, Abhijit. I like the example that you gave. Very nice.
Yeah, actually, I find a hard time understanding this, but I like try to figure it out to explain it in easy words.
No, I think
And
I
so,
totally agree with
yeah,
you. It's a challenging thing. It's not easy for somebody who has not been exposed to verification and as a formal methods as a topic of research, or even as course. It sometimes can be hard to visualize because these are very abstract things at times. And they're not like a piece of code that you write and you validate it, right? It's a little more
yes,
intuition that comes in. But good job. You carry on.
yes. So coming back to the point, now I ate the food that I cooked, and I got the food poisoning. And I was telling that I can't guarantee, because the food poisoning can be caused because the fish, either the fish cannot be eaten, or there is another possibility that I have not cooked the fish properly, or maybe I may not have cleaned the fish properly. So if you think about it, uh, what has happened now, because I was applying transformations on the input, which is like I was cooking the fish, I added some more approximations to this process, which has led which has created a confusion, because I can't now guarantee like whether it's because of the cooking or it's the fish itself. But now, suppose because I'm not a good cook, but now like suppose I go to a Michelin star chef and I ask him to cook the fish for me. Because he's a chef, he knows how to cook he knows how to precisely cook a fish. He knows how to clean it, and I can guarantee on the transformation that he's doing on the input, that is precise and perfect. So if after eating the food from the Michelin star chef, and I get a food poisoning after that, then I can guarantee that it's not because of the cooking. It's the fish itself is not eatable. And this is what a complete and incomplete method does. If it's complete, then I can guarantee the property when it actually holds. Now, the property here is that the fish can be eaten. So if it is cooked by the Michelin star chef, then and so I can have a guarantee there. But if in the other case, I cannot provide a guarantee, because the transformations I'm doing on the input, that is the cooking that I'm doing, is not as precise, or it is not as perfect as it should be. And this is why these two properties, like the soundness and completeness, is really important. So now let's discuss like what kind of combinations can we have between these two. So let's just be clear on the sound. We know that I should be at least honest, because even if my method is complete, that is, if I eat the food that is cooked by the chef, which is perfect, and and I get food poisoning. So now I'm clear that that is because of the fish. But still, because I'm not honest, because I'm not sound, I will say that the fish is eatable. So in that case, you cannot do anything. Like no matter if your method is complete or incomplete, because your method is not honest, you cannot do or you cannot work with this method. So let's scrap out the soundness being no. So we are only interested in soundness being yes. Now let's look at the completeness part. So ideally, you might say like we always want completeness and soundness. So the both should be yes and yes. Why do we even care about incompleteness? I would ask you a question. Can you afford to go to a Michelin star restaurant every day? You cannot, because that is expensive. And the same happens with the certification methods also. The method which has the property of completeness, they are expensive in computations and they are not scalable too. That means you can guarantee what you are doing, but that is very expensive, and it's kind of exponential in the number of layers you have, because essentially what you are doing, I'm just trying to give you intuition. So essentially what you are doing is you are working with neurons here, and the more neurons you have in your network, you will have more operations in complete methods. So even if it's precise, it may take so long that maybe you will spend up maybe 10 years for billions of neurons in the network. So that is not going to work, because you need it to be decently fast. And that is why there is a scope of, can we move away from completeness? Can we go in direction of incompleteness? But yes, I will sacrifice my preciseness, but I will try to be as complete as possible, because I cannot be complete, because these complete methods, which are based on MILP, which we'll be going to discuss further, which is multi-integer linear programming, they are very good. They are complete, they are precise, they give you guarantee, but they are not scalable. And that is why we are moving towards this abstraction, and this abstraction are incomplete, but they are sound. And that is why there is a scope of moving towards this abstract interpretation for verification of this neural network models. So I think this is clear now. So we need soundness and we can sacrifice on completeness, but I don't want to lose I don't want to lose a lot of precision. Like I want to be as complete as possible. And this is really important to understand, because whatever we are going to discuss further is like discussions around the completeness and how much of the precision I'm losing when I'm doing these transformations. So yeah, let's move forward. So now we understand we need sound methods. So there are two type of sound methods, that is incomplete and complete. And these incomplete methods are scalable and the complete methods are not scalable. And these not scalable methods are based on linear solvers and MILP. And the scalable methods are this abstract interpretation like Box, Xenotope, or Deep Poly. Deep Poly is like a name given by this lab for some kind of abstraction. So ideally, we want to be complete and sound, but we are moving towards abstraction. And also there is a research going on that can we get a combination of both? Like, can we have complete method with incomplete methods, and like, can we incorporate one into another's, and can we go, how can we go about it? So there is research going on, but still I would say, because the limitation of complete methods is like visible, let's like explore the incomplete method, which is very new, because complete methods are not new in verification of neural network models. This whole domain is new because it just started after 2016. But in this domain also, the incomplete methods is really new, because no one has thought about this abstract interpretation for certification of neural network models. So now we'll be focusing on the incomplete methods. So now let's move incrementally. So first we will take the simplest of the abstraction, which is the box interpretation. So essentially what we are going to assume is that we will be having a bound propagation. And when we say about bound propagation, you can intuitively think like when you are putting bound on each of your dimension, essentially you are having a box because you are having an interval for each of the dimensions. And this is how we will be defining our precondition, that is in input property phi, which we have discussed earlier. And what we're going to do is that we are going to push this phi through some transformations. And now these transformations are not, these are essentially the same affine transformations, ReLU transformation that we do with the conventional methods, but we have to do some sort of modification here because you will be clear once we move forward now. And also I will be explaining to you like how we lose precision in this process when we are pushing this phi to our abstract transformations. We will be over approximating it whenever we pass this phi through each of the layers. And due to this over approximation, we are moving towards incompleteness. So let's discuss forward. So this is the same thing that is happening, and the same thing like over approximation of phi n means that there. So yeah, so one thing to be like to just explain like to explain it more, like when we have over approximation, what over approximation means. So let me see. So yes, I have this slide. So in over approximation, what happens is, suppose you had some points, you had some perturbations, you found a very suitable uh, symbolic abstraction for these inputs, and you passed it through a convolution. And a notation that we are going to follow here is that when you have hash here, or sharp symbol here, it's going to define abstract transformation, like abstract convolution, abstract max pooling. So essentially, when you apply this abstract convolution over this symbolic region, you will end up in some other abstract shape. You will end up maybe as a abstract box only. If it's a box, you will end up as a box. Uh, and but you will find there are some points uh, which cannot be mapped back to the input. What this means is that in the process of the transformation, there can be some approximations happening where you will find some of the inputs or some of the regions that are getting introduced in the symbolic regions, which may never exist in the real life, which may never exist in the input. That is, I cannot map it back to any input. And this is what is causing incompleteness in the process. So when you pass the symbolic regions over the layers, you will increase your over approximation. You will find more and more this red points, and due to these red points, you are losing precision in this process. And at the end, when you will have a symbolic region to work with, and you will try to prove a property on the symbolic region, you will try you will have hard time providing guarantee on the input, because you do not know whether the point that you are the point that you are taking from the output, is it because of the over approximation or is it a legit point. And this is what is happening in this is a high level view of what is happening in this process. So just to repeat, you have a brightening perturbation, you have some abstraction. When you pass this abstraction, this precondition phi through the convolution abstract transformation, you get some other symbolic region, but this symbolic region will have more points. And I'll show you through a mathematical example how you get these more points and what is the intuition behind getting these more points, because it's a legit question at this point of time, that why are we getting more points into this region. So that we'll be discussing forward, but somehow we are getting more and more points, and because we are getting red points into this symbolic region, we will find it hard time certifying the output symbolic region, and we cannot provide the guarantee on that. And this is exactly what is happening here. And what they're trying to tell in this statement is that the over approximation phi n. So phi n is, I think, the over approximation that has happened after nth layer. So you pass phi to each layer, and after nth layer, you have some phi of n. And so this over approximation phi of n means that it is possible that there are concrete points inside phi of n. So there are two things that the keyword that we are going to use in this lectures, that is concretization and abstraction. And these are exact reverse of each other. So abstraction means you have this concrete points. So you do abstract interpretation, you do abstraction, and you find a symbolic region, and you work with the symbolic regions, and at the end you get one symbolic region, which is an abstraction. And now you do again a concretization of that. That is, you try to find a concrete points inside the region and try to find that whether they are satisfying the post condition, the psi property. And to just give you a relation between like how it is related to a traditional neural network and the abstract interpretation based neural network. Essentially, they are the same, only we have some abstract transformations, and these are not difficult. This sounds to be difficult because when we say it's abstract, we may find it like maybe it's abstract. So how are we going to define it? But they are simple, they are just different. So essentially, you are going to work here with abstract domains, and it might happen that this region is the loss of precision, because essentially if you're working with traditional neural network, you will be having only blue regions. But because of the over approximation that we have done, we have lost some precision, and we have got some extra points here, some extra points here. So this is a relation between the traditional neural network and the abstract interpretation based neural network.
Any questions anybody has?
Yes, questions, please.
Anybody has any questions, doubts? Because this is he kind of summarized very nicely exactly, what's happening in this. Yeah, Anubhav, please go ahead.
I have a question. If you can, Abhijit, if you can go to the previous slide where you were talking about, yes, this one.
Okay.
No, not this. The slide where you are talking about this one. So you say that after convolutional abstraction, right?
Yes.
We again go through another transformation, and then in the end, when we reach stage A4, that's where you are trying to formally verify or formally certify the network. Am I right?
Right.
But my question is, why can't we have an approach where we are doing a layer by layer formal analysis?
Yeah, so if I understood that question correctly, what you are trying to say is, because after each layer, I will have a very small amount of region, extra region that is going to get added.
Yes.
Can I certify there and there itself and correct my shape?
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
if say suppose if we have a proper understanding of the neural network, and if we can do this layer by layer analysis at each and every layer, we might not have to we might be able to come up
so
with,
we can at each layer we can correct this over approximation.
yes,
and we can cut this like this.
Yes,
anyway.
so we might even have a better soundness and completeness.
Yeah, that's really good point. And I don't know if that can definitely happen. Oh, I think that's not possible, because when you work with abstract regions, you don't know what part of that region has imprecise points. So
Right.
now I give you.
Yeah, so the point that, Anubhav, the question that you asked is a very valid question. However, the challenge is if you start doing it every layer, the points that are coming, let's say in the region A2, which are in out of bound points, let's say, or the imprecise points, it's no guarantee that in the next transformation, the red points are corresponding to the same red points. They may be totally new red points that are coming up.
Okay.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, yes.
And that is the challenge, because every transformation leads to a new set of these points that go out of boundary. And that's why even if you do that, you basically would verification at every layer, there's no guarantee that, eventually at the end you will still be doing a right job. However, what you're saying is a very interesting point that could be thought of in terms of some sort of a feedback loop that
Yes, sir.
runs through
Yes.
the layers. And I totally hear you. And I am assuming, if I remember correctly, there was a paper from, I think, the same group that they have tried something of that, back propagating the error for verification purposes. I don't know if
Yes.
it's a part of the course,
Yes,
but
yes.
you're right. It's a good idea.
Yes, sir. So basically, if say suppose we monitor the inputs at A1 and then we get the outputs at A2, and here we do the formal verification, and then from A2 to A3 we again do a formal verification. So I get your point that the red points may not be the same, and eventually, but it might be that we might be able to find the perturbation where it is exactly happening.
Yeah, I kind of get your point. Actually, it might not be a perfect solution, but yes, it's a more like going closer to the complete solution.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Abhijit, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, one thing is like we cannot like we don't know, like we can't easily discriminate between the legit and non-legit points. And the easy answer to this is, like, in all neural network models, we say it will be a very computationally heavy task, because just to do it at the end also will be so this is an easy answer, but then yeah.
Yeah.
But the real answer is it's not easy, because there is a paper where what you do is, like, you find these points and you back propagate it. And the problem that happens is that, suppose you have maybe a lot of layers and many neurons at each layer, you have to take it into account this back propagation for, like, in this process, it will take up a lot of time and memory also, because you have to keep a lot of things in memory for back propagation, and also the time will be like enormous time will be required. And also there is no guarantee that you can exactly get back to the exact or precise precise region, because there will be some points which will be there will be some red points between these blue points.
Okay.
But we can do some sort of we can move more towards the completeness. Yes, that is right.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone else has any questions, doubts? Okay, good. Yeah, carry on, Abhijit. Good job.
Yes. So just if you want to visualize, you can visualize like this. It's hard to visualize the abstract shapes, but I just got one more representation of what is happening here. And these are like the abstract transformers. So let's move forward. It's the same that I have discussed. So what they're trying to say here is that if we fail to prove the output property, it could be the property that is really getting violated, or there was some points due to over approximation that has happened due to the propagation of these inputs. So I think we have discussed this, and I think all of you now understand like what is happening and why this why are we getting. So now you understand, like, we are losing precision, but still you don't know, like, why are we getting extra points now. So now I'll try to get you an example to make it more clear. So now, just like before moving forward, the key challenge here is that first thing, you have to find the convex approximations for all these inputs. So that is the first challenge. And the second challenge is that once you have this approximation, like suppose now I have a box, I have decided that I'll work with box. Now I also need to define the transformers for that, because the transformers for every shape has to be different. Because I want my transformers to be specific and to be specific enough to capture the behavior of that region. So that is why the challenge here is not just the convex approximation, but also designing the efficient and precise abstract transformer. And just a point, and we'll be looking into it in the future also, that the box transformers, because the things that are easy are fast, but they are imprecise. But if you try to define your symbolic region with more complexity, with more constraints, then they will be more precise, but then they will have exponential complexity for obvious reasons. So let's move forward. Yes. Okay, so now so there are so now in this lecture we are defining how the box abstract transformers are. So if you look at these formulas, they are pretty trivial because you are just add. So this hash over the plus is that it's abstract addition, I would say. So essentially what this is that you have ideally you should have 2 points, but now due to abstraction you have bounds on each of the points. So these are the bounds, and ideally what you should have is like when you add these two inputs, you should get a third output. But now since we have bounds on both of these inputs and we do operation on these bounds, how are we going to define our output? So I think this is pretty trivial. If you add two bounds, this is how it's get added. And negation, also this is very obvious because, for example, it's -2, -3, and I apply, it should be reverse, -3, -2. And if I apply a negation transformer, then it should be 2 and 3 because you understand it, because even though -2 is my upper bound here, when I use a negation over it, the 2 will be my lower bound. So I think these are trivial things. So let's move forward to an example where you will be pretty much clear about why this over approximation is happening. So let's take, for obvious reasons, let's take the simple case where we have 2 dimensions. And let's have just one affine layer. So let's define our weights as this 1, 1, 1, -1, and our neurons at the next layer is x3 and x4, and our input is x1 and x2. And here we have the bounds on our input, and you can imagine it as a 2D thing, x1, x2, and you have some kind of bound on each of this x1 and x2, and you have some square or rectangle in this case, like some kind of abstract interpretation for these inputs x1 and x2. And now you want to find out what kind of symbolic region that you will get in the output after this affine transformation. So now in our output region we'll be having 2 dimensions only, but that is due to another neuron, that is x3 and x4. So now let's look at the example. So as we have defined, our input lies in, our x1 lies in 0.3 and our x2 lies in 0.1, 0.4. And we have defined our weights like this. So x3 is x1 plus x2 and x4 is x1 minus x2. Now with this relation and with this bounds, and we know till now these are exact bounds, and now we are trying to find the bounds on x3 and x4. So now the x3 is x1 plus x2. So if I want to find the maximum bound, the upper limit for x3, that should be upper limit for upper bound for x1 plus upper bound for x2. So that gives us 0.3 plus 0.4, that is 0.7. And similarly for lower bound, it should be what is it? Yeah. So it should be 0 plus 0.1, it is 0.1. And similarly for x4, for upper bound, you want x1 to be maximized and x2 to be minimized, which means my x1 should be 0.3 and x2 should be 0.1. That means my upper bound should be, for x4 should be 0.2. And similarly, the lower bound for x4 will be minus 0.4. Now, we did this transformation and we got the bounds on the output. We got the bounds on x3 and x4. Now comes the interesting part. Now let's look like why are we telling that there are some points in the input which do not map back to the, there are some points in the output that do not map back to the input. So now let's take this output point, that is 0.7 and minus 0.4. Now this is infeasible. Now let's look why this is infeasible. You subtract equation 2 from equation 1. So you get x3 plus x4, or sorry, x3 minus x4, because we are doing subtraction, we get that is equals to 2x2. And now when you substitute here this point, what you get here is that 2x2 is 1.1, that is x2 is 0.55. Now x2 is 0.55. Now look at your bound, the exact actual bound on your input. It is 0.1 to 0.4. But when you did the transformation, you got some new points which are not present in the input. And this is how we are losing our precision. And to just give you an intuition why this is happening, this is because what we have done is that we have independently defined each dimension. Like we have defined the bounds on x3 and x4 independently. But ideally, this abstract interpretation can have any shape, like there can be a relation between x3 and x4. So what I'm trying to tell you is that ideally, it is not possible for x3 to be 0.7 and x4 to be minus 0.4 at the same time. They can be, these values can be taken by these variables independently, but they cannot be taken at the same time. But we are not able to find, we are not able to get this kind of result through a box interpretation. And that is why, even though the box is very easy to understand, but they lose a lot of precision, because you can see it's very evident here that the points here in the output region do not map back to the input. So now I think you got an idea of like, how are we losing the precision? And now we got a motivation, like, okay, the box is bad, what can we do better? And now also it's not about the box being bad, but we also understand the fact that they are bad because I am not having any relation between my dimensions in box transfer, in box abstract interpretation. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm doing bound propagation for each dimension independently. So if I could try to define some kind of relation between my dimensions, but just a point to note here, in traditional neural networks, we define that our neurons are independent, like each neuron is independent in each layer. Like if I look at one layer, my neurons are independent, but this doesn't happen in abstract interpretation. We want our neurons to be dependent because we want they should work together to provide a good symbolic abstraction or abstract interpretation or symbolic region. So now we got a motivation why box is not good, and also how we lose precision. But before moving to some other abstract region, let's work more with the box. And also we will look at like, can we incorporate the box being incomplete? Can we incorporate it with multi-integer linear programming, which is a complete method? And can we get towards completeness? So essentially from box, we'll be moving towards Xenotope, in which we will be defining relations between the neurons. But for now, let's move forward and work a little bit more using these box transformations, because they are easy. So ideally, what I'm going to speak for the relation between the MILP, that is mixed integer linear programming, and the box, that we are going to incorporate the completeness and incompleteness together. We can do that with Xenotope also, which is another symbolic region. But why I'm doing this now is because it is easy to understand and work with the box. So that is why now let's look at how we can incorporate completeness with incompleteness. And this is a complete lecture, which we can do in the next session. But before that, I also just want to make a point more clear, is that now we have looked at how these things work. And now suppose you have the bounds on input, you do some affine transformations, which we have seen previously, and then you do ReLU. And ReLU is very simple, like when if it's less than 0, then you make it 0. In this case, my complete bound is greater than 0, then there's no need for that. But in this case, I'm going for x4 is minus 0.4 to 0.2, and I'm clipping my bound, and I'm having after ReLU 0 to 0.2, and then again a affine transformation, and then I'm getting output. So ideally, when I give my input, in order to verify robustness, what do I want? I want that for all these perturbations that I have my input, I want my neural network model, which is this, to classify it to some output, whether it can be O0 or O1, it can be anyone, but I just want that it should all classify to the same output, because they are essentially the perturbations of single image. So in this example, when you do the transformations, you see that the bounds on my output is output 0 is 0.6 to 1.4, and my bound on my output 1 is minus 0.6 to 0.2. And here you can, it's pretty much evident that the upper bound of this O1 is less than the lower bound of O0, which means that no matter what perturbations you have, what bounds you have, my O0 will always be greater than O1. So in this way, we can say, like in this case, the box succeeded in verifying the robustness. But let's just take the same example, but let's increase the perturbations on the input. And when you increase the perturbation, you got some new bounds here. And now what has happened that the lower bound of O1, O0 is not greater than the upper bound of O1. So this means that there can be a scenario where my O0 is 0.7, and then there will be a confusion whether that belongs to O0 or O1. So in this case, we have seen like, and ideally there are, because I have told you, there can be a possibility that either the property doesn't hold, or it has happened because of the over approximation, because of this transformations that we have doing. Because of these transformations that we are doing, we got some extra points, and this is what happens in verification. For this point 0.7, we can't guarantee like whether it's happening because of the actual property property is not hold, or it's because of the over approximation. And that is why these incomplete methods have this kind of trade-off. But in other case scenario, like for if you get some shape in output, and if you found that for each shape you satisfy the property that even if that is an over approximation, but if I can prove that if it happens for every point, then I can say that it happens for the actual points also, because essentially it's an over approximation. I know it might not be very clear, but once we will be discussing further, because essentially we are going to play with these shapes and this incompleteness things, because we know that we can't play with soundness, because we know that we need soundness. We want our method to be honest, but let's work with cooking, and let's not go to a Michelin star restaurant, but at least we can go to a decent restaurant, because at least we can afford that. So I think that's all for today, and we can continue the next thing.
Yes. Yes, good. Well done, Abhijit. Very, very well explained. I think for anybody who hasn't ever seen this kind of a topic, I think it's a very good way of explaining. Well done. So anybody has any questions? No questions. That means either everything is clear or not this. But anyways, what I will recommend is, for everyone who is in this area, I think anybody on this call is actually interested in this area, should go back and actually review the lecture material, and keep thinking about it, because this is something, in one shot it looks very evident, but there is a lot more going behind the scenes. So keep thinking about it, and every one of you is working on some problem of you can, and make sure that your technique or whatever you're doing, it's think in terms of robustness of your model. But anyways, I think at this point it's a very well explained, and there's a lot more coming in, so let's make sure that everybody is on the same page. So try to get yourself acquainted with the content even before the tutorials, because if you come to the tutorial just blank headed, it's very hard to actually absorb things. So if you read a little bit and come, then there will be more good discussions and more question and answer sessions that we can have, and that way these discussions will be very, very fruitful. So I think what I will recommend is, at this point, I will let Abhijit continue in the next lecture as well, because the explanations were really good, and I think it will be nice for everyone to follow the same train of thought, and that way we can proceed forward. Any questions by anyone? Questions, comments? Okay, if no more questions, then I'm